thing to recognize is that if we start with a picture of my daughter, and we say that the picture of her holding a sunflower is beautiful, and then we move to my actual daughter, and I say, well, isn't she beautiful? Well, the thing is, we recognize that we're not necessarily talking about her or the object as such, as being embodied, as being things in the world, right? What we're actually talking about is this concept of beauty, what it means to be beautiful, right? What is beauty? That question, what is beauty, again, is an aesthetic question, right? What does it mean? How is it identified? How do we recognize it? So that more real than objects, according to Plato, are concepts, right? So that we have the imitation of things, we have the things and the things as such, and these things, according to Plato, are mere instantiations of these concepts, right? Because in the end, what we're talking about isn't my daughter. In the end, what we're talking about isn't the sunflower, and we're definitely not concerned with the photograph. What we're concerned with is the idea of beauty, and that idea of beauty is intangible, right? Remember, again, I erased it, but as I said, as we move from level 4 to level 1, the things become less tangible, but become more real. So that the concept of beauty is less tangible than a beautiful thing, and even more real than a representation of a beautiful thing. But this thing has more reality than both of these, right? So according to Plato, as we move up this hierarchy, we also increase in reality, right? There's more reality, there's more truth, there's more meaning in discussing the idea of something being beautiful, or just beauty as such, rather than trying to instantiate that thing in a particular object, right? Because obviously beauty can be instantiated in many things. You can have a beautiful car, a beautiful house, a beautiful spouse, a beautiful child, a beautiful so on, right? Instead of trying to embody that thing in any particular object being beautiful, let's just disembody all of that and look at what it means to be beautiful. What is beauty as such? At the highest level for Plato, we move from this idea of concepts to what it is that we're trying to do, right? The governing structure of all things which are beautiful. And according to Plato, it would be, let's say, the form of beauty. But it doesn't even have to just be beauty. It can be anything which can be formalized. So for him, at the top, we have the form, right, as the most real, which completes our ontological half of his hierarchy. Mimesis at the bottom, objects, concepts, and then ultimately the form. Again, we recognize that we can be talking about a picture, that which the picture represents, the concept embodied within the object and the picture, and then the form of that concept, the structure of that concept. That concept, in this particular example, is the concept of beauty, right? So that this is a discussion, his ontological half, is a discussion of the ability to move from embodiment, which is divided lower half, to transcendence, which is the top half. We can't get to transcendence without first recognizing our embodiment, and then we slowly disintegrate our embodiment to look at the truths governing our lives and our understanding. Okay, so that's Plato's ontological half of his hierarchy. There's another half to his hierarchy, and the second half is his epistemological half. Earlier in the video, I stated that we're going to talk about both ontology and epistemology. We recognize that ontology is a theory of being, and epistemology is a theory of knowledge, a theory of understanding. So what's going to happen is exactly the same. All the assumptions are the same. All the claims are the same. The only difference is now, instead of looking at embodiment, we're going to look at understanding. So the question then becomes, what's the least type of understanding that an individual can have? What is a form of understanding that is something that is a position that an individual can hold, but hasn't very much weight? Well, at the very bottom of Plato's epistemological half of his hierarchy of the forms is what's known as conjecture. Right? At the very bottom of his hierarchy of the forms is conjecture. And by conjecture, Plato is talking about assumptions, right? And not just assumptions, not like hypothetical assumptions, but things that ideas that you come to have, not because you formalize the idea yourself, but because you were told the idea. So for example, if I were, there's a perfect example. I've done this in previous discussions. During Hurricane Katrina, they said that people were looting, and they showed a picture of a black couple, a black man and a black woman, and they had bags of food, and they said that that was a representation of looting. Then, and this was the Associated Press. Then they have, and I have this like written up, you can find this online, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's discussed this. Then they have a picture of a white couple, and they also have food, and they said that something like they were foraging or they found food, right? The difference is obvious, right? How can you have two couples doing both the same activity? One is classified as looting, one is classified as foraging or finding. Obviously, that was meant to send a signal to the population. If the population then, in discussion at the dinner table, says, hey, you know, wow, there's a whole bunch of black people in New Orleans looting, then there is some fact to what is being said, right? What you are saying does have some fact to it, but what you're saying is nothing more than conjecture, right? That's all that's being saying, because if someone were to question you on the legitimacy of that claim that black people in Louisiana are looting, then you would refer to the Associated Press. You'd say, oh, you know, I read it in the Associated Press and they said that they were looting, so it has to be true, right? So the least form of epistemological reality, the claim that has the least substance, is a claim on conjecture. Because when questioned or challenged about the authenticity or the validity of a claim, the justification is reference to someone else. I don't know, ask him. I don't know, I read it here, right? That's conjecture. So conjecture is sort of on par with mimesis, right? With an imitation. It's an imitation of knowledge. It's not that the individual actually has any knowledge. It's nothing more than being a parrot or a mouthpiece for those that actually have substantial things, substantial claims, right? So conjecture is the least form of knowledge, right? A form of knowledge that is more substantial than conjecture is what's known as belief, right? So that we can talk about believing something, right? And an individual might have belief in whatever it might be, right? I might believe that there is a God. I might believe that, you know, aliens are going to land. I might believe that, you know, I have love for an individual. There's lots of things that people believe. And the reason, if I were to challenge the individual, just like in conjecture, if I were to challenge the individual and ask them about their belief, there are one or two things that can typically happen. And I'm not going to go into too much detail because there's a whole different discussion on this. You can either give me a response that's known as dogma, right? A dogmatic response. So you can be dogmatic, G-O-G-M-A-T-I-C. So if I ask you to justify your beliefs, you can be dogmatic in your justification. And the question is, well, what is a dogmatic justification? So I would ask someone, why do you believe that there are aliens? And they might say, because I saw them. And I would say, okay, I know you saw them, can you show me them? And they say, well, no, I can't show you the aliens because they've left. You can see that the justification is self-referential. I'm referring to myself. So my daughter comes to me and she says, Daddy, can I go outside and play? And I say, no. And she says, why? And I say, because I said so. That's dogmatic, right? The justification, the attempt to justify my position refers to my own standards, right? So that a dogmatic justification will support an individual's belief, but that belief is really not, it's not necessarily meaningful because it is self-referential, because it is dogmatic.